Hey Dan, how are you?
How's it going, Zach?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, not bad.
Were you on pins and needles last night with the election?
Hold on a second. Turn up the sound here.
You had pins and needles with the election last night.
Oh, yeah, well, I think the mayor won handily. Yes. Went and got a booster yesterday.
Oh, did you? Oh, you got, what'd you get? Moderna or
Yeah,
Pfizer?
which is what I got last time, yeah. Yeah.
So Dan, this is Helen. How did you go about getting the booster? I wasn't sure where to do that.
We just went up to a Lincoln Pharmacy. That's our neighborhood place. It's up at Delaware and Morton.
Yeah.
I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. You walk in.
You have to make an appointment, or can you walk in?
We just walked in.
Oh, okay.
It's whatever days Serena is there, because she gives the shots. She's the one in charge there. So. And she give whatever you want, any of the three, JJ, Moderna, or.
Oh, great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Do you need to bring the proof of what you had before?
Oh yeah, you should bring your card there.
Yeah, because they'll know how many months and.
Yeah. So we had our cards, so I don't know what the alternatives are. We didn't have any problem there.
Yeah.
They'd given the shots before to us before.
Mm-hmm.
At a clinic down in South End Church, actually. When I got it, but my wife got it up there at the pharmacy.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
I ended up getting mine up at the mall.
Oh, up at Crossgates?
Up at Crossgates, yeah.
We had one of my neighbors needed to get tested for a job that he was taking. And he had a hell of a time trying to find somebody who was giving tests. He finally found some place up on Central Avenue that was giving out tests. So just to see if he had COVID, that was the thing. He had to show proof that he didn't have it. It was kind of a weird situation, but nobody seems to be giving these tests now.
Got Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hello, Zach. Hi,
How are
folks.
you?
Good. All's good.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Michelle, Beverwick's going to participate in the go-around next month, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure we will. Yeah, I hope you get some new. I'm surprised, Zach, that I know we did a year or two ago. I was sort of hoping to hear some different groups. So you got different ones coming on?
Yes, we do. We have the new Downtown Neighborhood Association. The leadership of that is going to be presenting Mount Hope Neighborhood Association. I think Helderberg and Melrose.
Okay, good. Downtown Mount Hope. What was the other one? Downtown Mount Hope. Melrose. And you said another one.
And Helderberg.
Oh, Helderberg, right. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, that'll be great. Kelly, I just committed us to the neighborhood go around next month.
Yes.
And Zach just said
you'll remember I'm out of town.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But I think that's great. I think that's really great.
Yeah. Zach just said it's downtown, Mount Hope, Melrose, and Helderberg neighborhood.
That's so awesome. That's really lovely. Yeah. Thanks for thinking of us, Zach.
You bet. You bet.
I
Hey,
won't
Howard.
say this, I won't say this too loud because I know this is streaming, but I'm planning a surprise trip. So we're going to be away. I just can't say where. So yeah, we'll be out of town.
Good.
Nice. Nice. All right. Who else came on the meeting? Howie. Good to see you, Howie. Officer Webster, Officer Johnson, Officer Storiali, Ben Peterson.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you, Officer Peterson. Good to see you. Just gonna give it one more minute. Okay, everybody? We'll get the meeting started in just a second. All right, everybody. It's 6:31 according to my clock here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Council of Albany Neighborhood Associations. I am Zach Simpson, your CANA chair. It's good seeing everybody. Got a pretty busy meeting tonight. But first, I just wanted to congratulate all the candidates that won last night, as well as those who ran. CANA was really pleased to do a lot of candidate forums this year, and it was really, a great experience. I really appreciated the work with the League of Women Voters of Albany County and the also the Albany chapter of the NAACP. So just congratulations, everybody. Appreciate your efforts. So I just want to first start out with the Albany Police Department. There's several officers on tonight. Whoever would like to go first, please go ahead. Thank you for coming.
All right, I'll go for it. Hope everyone's doing well. Just a few things I wanted to go over real quick. It's the time of year, things are starting to get a little colder, and I would recommend passing this to the people in your neighborhoods. Is to not leave their car running unattended, because no car in my 17 years on this job has ever been stolen without the keys in it, or somebody having the keys. We don't do hot wiring here as much as people might think. So one way to keep your car from being stolen is to not have keys in it. So I know people will warm their car up or something like that, and that's that could be a recipe for disaster. So I like to start passing that information around this time of year, because the last week or so we've had more cars stolen than we've had like in a couple months. So that could be partly the reason why. Usually is somebody at a convenience store runs in, comes out, their car's not there. So I would pass that around. Another thing.
Excuse me, Officer Webster.
Sure.
This house stole. Isn't it also illegal to leave your car running?
It is absolutely illegal, and if your car is left running unattended and you and you get your car stolen, you're actually supposed to get a ticket for that. So you would also get a ticket and your car stolen. So it's not a good combination. So that's a bad thing, but it is. You're not supposed to leave it unattended. But the other thing I wanted to touch on was the last month, and I'm sure there's several reasons for this. Burglaries have gone up a bit. My thinking is a few different reasons. One, people are going back to work now. Most burglaries happen during the day when people are at work. So, so we've had a titch of a rise in burglary. One of the things I like to pass around, also at this time of year, summer is over. First floor air conditioners. In the past, we have had burglars who have pushed them in to get into houses. It's a way some of them will make entry. So be mindful of, people should be mindful of having first floor air conditioners unsecured. And other than that, statistically, at this point, we've recovered 105 guns this year, which is a pretty large number. It's up from the last, I mean, this might be the highest number we ever had, but at this point of the year, and 91 gun arrests. So it's concerning that there are that many guns out there, but at least arrests are being made. Other than that, I'll leave it open to questions. If anybody has any questions or concerns, that's what I have for this month.
Any questions?
All right. It's good when you put it out there. No questions. It means put everything out there.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
LT, do you have anything to add before I go into my community liaison?
Nope, I was going to turn over to you.
All right. I've been here a couple of times. My name is Ben Peterson. I'm a sergeant with the Neighborhood Engagement Unit. So I think I came probably last month to tell you guys about the program we're launching in the academy for this session, the Albany Community Liaison Partnership. So we're doing this in conjunction with ACPAC and T3C3. Basically, I'm here to try to get some volunteers. I see some names of people that have volunteered already. Kelly Hausler, yep. And then I saw someone else as well, an ACPAC member. Oh, Kara Washington's on as well. So we need more volunteers, guys. We're going to launch November 19th. It's primarily going to be a 1 hour commitment on Friday nights from 4 to 5. We're looking to do, every recruit's going to do a tour of every ward in the city. So it's going to be 15 weeks long. We're not asking anyone to commit to 15 weeks. We know that's, it's not going to be possible for a lot of volunteers. But if you can do 1 week, that's more than we can ask from you. And basically, I'll call you earlier in the week, confirm where you want the recruit to come meet you, and they'll come meet you. And it's an hour-long commitment. You guys can go for a walk through the neighborhood, drive through the neighborhood, stop by a coffee shop. You can invite them in if you feel inclined to do so. We're just looking to have the recruits really start early with the community policing and be comfortable talking to people from all different walks of life, all different neighborhoods within the city. This is one of our core principles within the Albany Police Department. And Chief Hawkins has really championed it. And, we're starting really early in the academy now. So these are, anyone that, thinks they'd be interested, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my contact info into the chat box. And if you know of other people that would be interested as well, feel free to pass it along. If anyone has any questions, myself, I think Carol's on, we can probably answer any questions you may have. We're also doing an informational session tomorrow. I'll share that flyer. It's on the Albany Police Department's Facebook page right now. So if you wanted to pop into our virtual session, you can pop in tomorrow and ask any questions that you may have.
Yep. Thank you, Officer Pierce. I actually just got a copy of it today, and I'm going to share it with the CANA membership so they have it by tomorrow. Well.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for your time, guys.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. Any other updates from the Albany Police Department? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our presentation this evening is with the retiring Common Council members. We have 3 of them coming on tonight, but they're running a little late with their Finance Committee meeting. So we're actually gonna, if there's no objection, we're gonna bump up the new business item in the agenda. And we're gonna turn things over to Rosanna Cotto-Petrez. She is the director of Northeast New York Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. And she's here to present about the Excluded Workers Fund. So thank you, Rosanna, for coming on, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Zachary. I also have my colleague, Angela Castillo-Vilches, here with me. Her name is Nanny Cash Training in the Zoom. And Zach, I don't know if we're able to share our screen. We have a short PowerPoint presentation.
Sure, you're all set to go ahead when you're ready.
Great. So thank you everyone for having us here. My name is Rosanna Cotto-Petrez. I'm the director of NENICASH, the Northeast New York Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. And we are a small coalition based in Albany, New York that provides workplace health and safety trainings to workers in the Capital District. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Angela.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we are here going to talk to you about the Excluded Workers Fund. This is a fund that was put into place a couple months ago, and it directly affects our community members. So Rosanna, whenever the next slide, please. So what is the Excluded Workers Fund? So New York State recently allocated monetary assistance to workers who were not eligible from other pandemic or unemployment benefits and who lost 50% or more of their wages anytime between February of March 2020 and March of 2021. So this was a fund that was created in order to support these workers that had lost these wages during the pandemic and who weren't able to receive some of that relief. As of October 8th, the fund is closed, unfortunately. However, we are hoping that the governor will extend some of the funds for the Excluded Workers Fund. And so we're hoping that it'll be back up and running at some point. And so we wanted to come to talk to you about it. So to make you aware that this is a resource that you can present to your community members. So eligibility. In order to be eligible for this fund, the worker must be living in New York State now, have been living in New York State before March 27th of 2021. They must be ineligible for unemployment insurance or federal COVID-related income relief. So this is someone who wasn't able to file for unemployment or receive the stimulus packages that the rest of us received, and have earned around $26,000 or less between April 19th, 2020 and April 19th, 2021. And this person also must have self-attest to 50% of losses of income and wages during that time. That means that at any time between February 2020 and April 2021, this person lost 50% or more of their wages. That could have been for a week's period. That could have been for 6 months. So the eligibility is very strict on this fund. So if you have any community members in mind for this type of fund, that's something that you might want to directly talk to them about. It seems that not all workers would be able to be eligible for this, but we wanted to open your eyes to who in your community might be able to benefit from the Excluded Worker Fund if it were to open again.
And so what our organization is doing is providing this information to workers. And before, when the application was open, we were helping people submit applications. So there's different types of documentation that people need to provide in order to apply for the fund. And we are thinking that if and when the fund opens back up, this would be the same type of requirements that would be there for the applications. So people have to have some type of proof of work. They have to have documents that prove their identity, so ideally with a photo ID, and they have to provide proof of residency, that they live in New York State and that they were living in New York State in the timeframes that Angela mentioned. The Excluded Workers Fund offers 2 tiers of rewards based on how much documentation people can provide. So similar to a driver's license, you have different types of different documents give you different points. And so if someone's able to have 5 points of documentation, they would get the tier 1 level of funding, which is $15,600, or the equivalent of $300 a week for 52 weeks. If they're not able to have all those 5 points of documentation, if they're only able to have 3 points of documentation, they would be eligible for the tier 2 funding, which is only $3,200. So we were really hoping to assist Capital District workers in getting all their documentation ready so that they could be eligible for the tier 1 funding. And so that's something that our organizations are going to continue doing. If the fund opens back up, we'll be helping people renew their driver's licenses or get a driver's license in New York State, file their state and federal tax returns. So you can see on the right-hand side some of the different examples of documentation that people can provide to prove their residency. They can use a license, state and federal tax return. They can use a medical bill that has their address, and they can use a bank or credit card statement. There's a long list of other documents that people can use to prove their residency, but mostly we just need to see that they live in New York State. Again, for proof of identity, it would have to be a photo ID, so a license or a passport that's valid. And then to show proof of employment, people can provide either pay stubs if they have that, or if they don't have pay stubs, if we're talking about people that might be undocumented or working, getting paid under the table, then they can have a letter from their employer that attests to them being employed for a certain amount of time and that they did not have a job during the pandemic or that they were affected because of the pandemic. So we can share the link to the Department of Labor's website for the Excluded Workers Fund through the chat. But just to let you know, the fund, as it was announced in early August, was for $2.1 billion. And so out of that, the Department of Labor has already dispersed most of the money. So that's why the applications are closed now. You can see that most of the claims that were submitted were in New York City, Long Island, Westchester. In Albany, Buffalo, and Rochester, there were some claims that were submitted, but overall the upstate communities and the Capital District communities did not have enough time to apply for the fund. As Angela mentioned, on October 8th, the application closed, and many of our organizations that are doing work around the Excluded Workers Fund were just getting started to conduct meetings such as this one, give presentations to the community so that people could have access to the fund. So we're hoping that if the fund opens back up, we'll be able to continue this, and that you would be helping us get the word out to the different neighborhood associations if you think that any of our Albany community members might be eligible for the fund. So right now that the applications are closed, we are shifting to still provide some services to workers and getting them ready for the possibility that the application might open up again. So a lot of the organizations that we are partnering with are helping people backfile taxes. That's one of the best ways that people can show eligibility and get those 5 points of documentation for receiving the higher tier of funding. For some undocumented workers, they don't have social security numbers, so we would want to get them an individual tax ID number or an ITIN, and that's another way that they can qualify for the tier 1 funding. Our organizations are also doing different works around financial literacy, helping people renew personal documents, which is another main issue in our communities, people that rely on their passports or their driver's licenses for documentation. They might have let their documents expire during the pandemic, or they weren't able to renew them. So that's something that we are hoping to do. And also connecting people to other essential services such as food, food pantries or housing assistance, anything that can help people during this difficult time because of the pandemic. So you can see the website that's listed here. That's the list of different organizations throughout the state that's providing services to what are called excluded workers, the workers that were not eligible to receive unemployment insurance or pandemic benefits. So you can reference that, and I'll share that through the chat also when we finish. So if you know anyone that maybe did happen to apply between August 1st and October 8th, we are able to connect them with different organizations throughout the Capital District that are following up with applications and helping people make sure that they can receive the funding that they applied for. So one organization is Columbia County Sanctuary Movement, based in Hudson, New York. And the other one is Schenectady Community Action Program based in Schenectady. Nenikash is also here to direct people to different organizations if people want more information on the Excluded Workers Fund, or like I said, if and when the fund opens back up, we would be hoping to do more presentations like this to the community so people are aware that the fund exists. I'll check the chat to see if there's any questions, but that's the end of our presentation. And here are the links to the Excluded Workers Fund Department of Labor website. Our name is Nenikash, again, that's our website. And then there's a coalition called the Fund Excluded Workers Coalition that's putting pressure on the governor to extend the fund and allocate more money into the fund, because we know that a lot of our communities do not even have access to apply. So we know that that money is definitely needed, and we want to make sure that all New Yorkers have access to it. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. Does anybody have any questions about the Excluded Workers Fund? Oh, Vince Ragosu, Eagle Hill.
Okay, 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good,
Yeah.
Vince.
Okay, so Rosanna, this presentation that you just put on, so this fund is not active right now?
Yes, unfortunately, when we emailed SAC to coordinate this presentation, people were able to apply back in September, but on October 8th, because the funding is running out, the Department of Labor closed the application. And they do have a backlog, a waiting list of people that submitted applications shortly before October 8th that they're not sure are going to be receiving funding.
So is this program the same as the ERAP program that was in effect from, I'm going to have to guess, say from April of 2021 to, I believe it ended in October of this month. Is that the same program, or is this a different program?
I haven't heard of that.
The ERAP program?
Yes, I think this is a different program.
This is entirely different. Okay, thank you. The other thing is, I noticed that you said undocumented workers. So is this every person that comes in illegally is entitled to this?
So for workers that were working during the pandemic and that were not eligible to get unemployment benefits, or if they didn't have access to stimulus packages, if those workers were working and they can show proof that they lost some type of wages between the time periods that Angela mentioned, then they would be eligible to receive this. And like I mentioned, the documentation requirements are pretty strict. So people have to have shown that they paid taxes, that they lived in New York State, that they were working during the time of the pandemic, but it is open to people that are undocumented.
Gotcha. The third and final question, will the presentation that you just put on, will we be able to download that so we can go back and refer to it?
I can send it through the chat.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can send it through the chat.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, and we can also send it to Zachary. That way he can spread that
Okay.
around.
Thank you.
Sounds
Appreciate it.
good. Yeah, I'll
Right.
send it out. I'll send it out with the next email to the listserv. Great.
Appreciate that, Zach.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, well, it's ERAP is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that was to pay for people who couldn't pay the rent to send to the landlords. One of the things I wanted to ask is ERAP, we had applied for that for some of our tenants. and it was a nightmare trying to get through the paperwork. You had said that you do help with basically the paperwork and stuff like that. Does that just for your program, or is that for other? Would you help with other programs that people have?
So our organization is only providing these type of presentations to the community to inform them of the fund. But then the other two that were mentioned, Columbia County Sanctuary Movement and Schenectady Community Action Program, are actually helping people apply to the fund. So those organizations, some of them like Schenectady, SCAP, and Schenectady also provides, assistance with other applications like public assistance or food stamps. Columbia County Sanctuary Movement mostly works with immigrant workers and following up with any issues that they might have. So I don't know if they help people apply for other services. But yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
Do you know of anything in Albany that does that by any chance? Or
in Albany, we would be directing them to Columbia County Sanctuary Movement because they hired more staff to do this work.
And there's also language assistance. So, if the worker speaks Spanish or Portuguese or French, there is, an organization that will be able to help them fill out and organize their documents in time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, Rosanna and Angela, thank you for joining us tonight and presenting about the program. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, another new business item. I just want to turn things over to Tom McFeeters with the South End Community Collaborative if he's ready. He wanted to have a few minutes to speak to CANA tonight. Tom, how are you tonight? Good to see you.
Very well, Zach. Nice. Thank you for having me on. And I really want to say that this is this is really something that was instigated by Arlene Way, who is here tonight also. So I hope she will add in. But I've been running something called the South End Community Collaborative for a couple of years now. And when the pandemic hit, of course, it turned from a monthly in-person meeting with occasional committee meetings and 2 or 3 public meetings a year to a weekly Zoom forum. And lo and behold, got bigger and much more active. And the goal of South End Community Collaborative was always to tackle local issues and organize for effective change for the South End. But I think it's fair to say that our neighborhood has sometimes felt abandoned. The city's priorities are different than our own. And unless we're very well organized, it's hard to steer that ship in any other direction. But it's always been clear that the core issues that impact the South End impact the uptown neighborhoods as well. Housing and our deteriorated housing stock, jobs, youth services, and many more of the quality of life issues are all things that we have in common with Arbor Hill, West Hill, Sheridan Hollow, and the related areas. So Arlene has been participating. Arlene, who is the director of the Arbor Hill Development Corporation, has been participating in our meetings for some time now and sort of helping us to understand how we can relate more and coordinate more with the uptown neighborhoods and the groups that work there. So when the Times Union did their A City Divided series this past summer, and the announcement that the city of Albany would be receiving $80 million in pandemic relief funds this fall, those two things have kind of spurred us in the South End, and I'm sure many other neighborhoods, to start thinking about how this money could be best used effectively in the areas where it's most needed. So that has been part of our discussion now within the South End Community Collaborative for well over the last year. And Arlene recently shared with me the work that they've been doing around environmental justice. It's pretty well known that South End has its environmental justice issues. They are similar, although not the same. But one of the things we want to explore with CANA is whether CANA could be sort of a vessel for coordinating a stronger approach by all of the neighborhoods that are most impacted by disinvestment, redlining, pollution, and all the rest of it, to work together. So that's why I'm here. Arlene, would you please chime in a little?
Okay. So thank you, Tom. Anyway, so CANA has a history for being, for going into battles and being available to, on issues of equity and access and, leading the way. I mean, you guys have been doing it for years, way before my time. So, anyway, so I guess this is where we are. We are looking to collaborate with the South End. We're looking to, because our issues are so similar, and we've been talking, and so we've invited them to join with us and some of the work that we've been talking about, and they've included us. And I guess we're just coming to everybody, let you know what it is we're doing. And to, I guess, kind of like lay the groundwork for support should we need it, and we probably will. But basically, that's it.
So there's a couple of major issues with neighborhood groups. One is lack of capacity. What we're trying to do in the South End is come up with not just a definition of the concerns that we see that should be maybe addressed by the ARP money, the COVID relief money, but also get to the point where we're coming up with specific programs and solutions that we could propose to the city and the city council when that time comes. And that process will start in the new year with the new council, with the city defining how it's going to go about making these decisions, and asking for RFPs or something similar for various projects. It's a big undertaking. The group that is furthest along in that with the South End Community Collaborative is the group that's working on affordable home ownership, and Arlene and I are both a part of that. And they will have some very specific proposals very soon. But they're not South End proposals. They're proposals for all of the neighborhoods that deal with disinvestment and vacant buildings and all the rest. And some of them will be proposals around spending money, having the city spend more money, for instance, on vacant buildings. And some of them will be proposals on how to generate more money to help people become homeowners in neighborhoods where there's a gap between what a building will be worth and what it costs to fix it up once it's done, and a bunch of other things. So, so these are very specific, and we'll be looking for support for those from CANA and other organizations once they are more or less gelled in place. But I think that there are other areas where we have so many similar concerns, and workforce development is another one, community safety is another, and so on. So that's pretty much our process.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Arlene. And so I think, Tom, in one of your emails, did you kind of have an idea of a quarterly meeting, like a quarterly meeting to kind of discuss everything that's going on?
I actually think that may have been Arlene's idea, but I think it would be a good idea. Was that your idea, Arlene?
Well, okay, so here's what, I guess what we can propose is that as our projects begin to take shape, we would like to just share with you so that you guys can know what is going on. and be available to join us as you will. Does that make sense, Tom?
Sure. But
Okay.
I would really like, we don't have a lot of representation from the South End. You're here representing the entire north side of the city right now, right? So it would be good if we had more people on these meetings, if we're going to have a quarterly meeting, and maybe if CANA wants, take some time at a CANA meeting to have make that part of the meeting in the every quarter. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and I think that's very doable. I think that, because I think, Howie, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the CANA used to have certain business meetings throughout the year? Like they would take a
Generally,
meeting.
we integrated them when we met, in person. We're able to conduct the business meeting at the end of, we gave the first hour to the speaker in the business meeting, was the second hour to the CANA meeting.
I mean, that's something we could aim for. Well, we're going to shift gears now. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Arlene, very much for talking with CANA. So let's get to our conversation with some of the retiring Common Council members. I see that they've all joined us. I know that they just had a Finance Committee meeting that just wrapped up, I presume. So this year we have 5 Common Council members that are retiring. They include Richard Conti from the 6th Ward, Kathy Fahey from the 7th Ward, Judy Doche from the 9th Ward, Mike O'Brien from the 12th, and Joe Igo from the 14th Ward. So we have 3 of these individuals here with us tonight to speak with us, answer any questions that you have. So thank you very much, council members O'Brien, Conti, and Doche. So I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to just maybe introduce yourselves to CANA, maybe talk about which neighborhood you're from and a little bit about your wards. So Richard, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks for having us. CANA's been around for a long time. I remember when I would go to some CANA meetings in the library way back when. So I am in my 24th year, that is 6 terms on the council. 6th Ward, which is Center Square, Hudson Park, Park South, and Washington Park neighborhoods. So over those 24 years, I've seen a lot of change. I've seen the council grow. And I've seen the council become more assertive as new members have come on. And, over the past couple of years, the past 3 elections, we've had a substantial turnover in membership. For this past election, there were 5 of us who were leaving. But the election before that, we had close to a 50% turnover. And the election before that, we had close to a 50% turnover. So that a majority of the members who are currently serving are actually in their 1st or 2nd term. So actually, I think a majority are in their 1st term of the current members. 8 of the current members are in their 1st term. So that's been a substantial turnover, and brings a lot of new blood and new perspectives in, and that's helped keep the council moving. A lot of issues, and I assume maybe we'll do some perspective on that as we move on. But been a long time, seen a lot, and it's sometimes been a challenge, but it's also been rewarding when we are able to get things done.
Right. Let's see. Councilmember Doche, you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Judy Doche. I represent the 9th Ward, which is essentially Albany Medical Center to St. Peter's along New Scotland, going over to Hackett Boulevard, and then to Park Avenue, a little bit over into Park South territory and Madison Avenue, and also Reichman area. Neighborhood associations include Helderberg, Park South, just a little bit of Park South, a little bit of Pine Hills, and a little bit of Woodlawn, New Scotland Avenue. So I've only been on the council for 8 years. It's hard work. I gotta say that the thing that is most surprising to me is how much power people think you have and how little power you really do have. So it can be hard to get a pothole filled. I gotta say, it can be hard to get a response to an email about a pothole, getting a pothole filled. And when it comes to city finances, something that we've been discussing in the finance committee is how little control we really have over the budget, and how funds are now being moved around out of our fund balance, and with the $80 million of federal funding, with virtually no council input, and I say virtually, really no council input. We're lucky if we get notified before the press conference. I think, and I mention that here and now because I think that I will be looking to assist the new council in getting some amendments passed to the charter, because I think that there needs to be more checks and balances, more oversight on expenses, especially when it comes to expenses, but other items. And I will say that despite those frustrations, I am pleased that, I have been able to accomplish certain things while serving on the council, that, improvements to our commercial district in terms of expanding the sidewalk so we have more space for sidewalk cafes, eliminating a lot of the ADA issues. They are getting a sidewalk along our park area in the Babe Ruth Field that was just one accident after another in that area that made it very hazardous for our children. So I continue to fight for some other improvements to the neighborhood, and talk about the commitment to put neighborhoods and residents first in our discussions in the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councilmember O'Brien, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Brien. I represent the 12th Ward, and I have done so now for 5 terms. The 12th Ward eastward starts at Westview, which is close to where Allen Street meets Central Avenue. And then it zigzags through the presidential streets, always stays on the north side of Washington Avenue until it gets to Fuller Road. It gets up even beyond Fuller Road. And beyond Fuller Road, it has both sides of the Pine Bush part, the part of the Pine Bush that is in Albany. Most of it is either highway, commercial space, but there are some residential areas way at the end of the city, in Point of Woods, in the Dunes, and in the Pinehurst development. I want to start off by saying, I think the council is going to greatly miss the talents of Richard and Judy. Richard is the best parliamentarian I've ever had to work with. He has a great institutional knowledge of the council. He is detailed. He knows the legislative process and knows how to gently or forcefully direct us to the proper legislative way of proceeding, and how to get the attention of the administration that maybe they have muffed something. For example, maybe the charter already says what the public safety commissioner is supposed to do at a separate office other than the mayor's office, and suggest ways of bringing that to their attention. And Judy is the best budget and codes person. I think she has the budget memorized, And I think she has the USDO memorized and has gone into great detail with improving both and made excellent suggestions, I thought. I mean, tonight, she made the suggestion that the $81 million be put into, maybe not broken down dollar by dollar, but somehow find its way into an amendment to the budget such that it be considered part of our budget, so that there is indeed for the future council some oversight over how $81 million is going to be spent. And you know, I have to praise the other members too. Kathy Fahey had a lot to do with that. I mean, God, she's probably had chaired 25 meetings over the rewriting of the USDO, which is as detailed an ordinance as you could possibly imagine. And Joe Igo, I mean, he has the longest history in Albany for knowing the players, even back back to the very beginning of when Mayor Jennings took office. And Joe grew up in Albany and knows his neighborhoods and knows a lot of the personnel historically that were headed up various departments before I ever became involved. I am missing the fifth, so remind me of the fifth council member who was retiring.
Joe Igo?
No, I mentioned Joe. I mentioned Kathy. I mentioned Judy. Oh, obviously me.
It's you.
So, you know, I mean, to me, the greatest learning point of being on the council is the fact of getting out there and meeting so many people and becoming familiar with the city, with the players in it, getting a genuine respect for what the various departments do. And even though we may have some disagreements, you know, I think we have a lot of talented commissioners who do know what they're doing and want to do what's good for the city. And they'll probably get frustrated by some of the same things which we get frustrated by. But as Richard pointed out, it's definitely a young council, a new council. Better than half going into the new council are going to be in their second term. And I think there's only two people I can think of, Kelly and Jack Flynn, that are going into their third term. So that's unusual. I mean, most councils probably had council. My predecessor, Philly DePace, I think, God, he was 88 when he retired, and I think he had been there for almost 40 years. I think maybe 38 years. So I think it's good that, you know, we have a younger council, but that institutional knowledge is so important. And, you know, Richard epitomized that, and Judy became so familiar with, you know, planning and with budget that you would have thought that she had been there for years and years and years. But was, you know, my God, I was always amazed at the detail with which, you know, both Richard and Judy combed through ordinances, local laws, process, and reminded us of what was the best practice. So.
Good. So I did jot down a couple of questions, but folks, if you have any questions, use your raise your hand tool, raise your physical hand. So one thing I wanted to just ask, can you talk a little about how you came to decide to run for the Albany Common Council? And if you want to talk about your first campaign for office, that would be good. Judy, you want to go ahead first?
I retired from the New York State Department of Health, and I was doing some private practice out of my house, and I had thought about, I think that I would like to hold elected office again. I had been on the Albany City School Board, but I didn't see any opportunities And then one day I was coming home from Home Depot and my husband says to me, "Did you hear that Jim Sano decided to retire?" And I put down the paint cans that I was going to paint my cellar floor with and started hyperventilating because I was like, wow, so something you can do. You really have a local impact. I know and love the neighborhood. I've been here for 30, at that point, 24 years or something like that. And I think I'm a good advocate. I think, I come up to speed on things pretty quickly. And what I said to people when I ran is the one thing you can be assured of is that I'm relentless. And I think anybody who knows me and knows my work in this position knows that that's true. So I decided to run. It was very interesting that Jim Sano, I had already petitioned for him and already helped get his name, his petitions filed. His petitions were filed. So it left us basically less than 2 days to get signatures. And the challenge then is to make sure you're not getting signatures that's already on somebody else's petition, and do that in 2 days. And even further complicated by the fact that since I circulated his petition and signed his petition, I could not circulate and sign my own petition. So I lined up other people to go around door to door with me, did the petitions on 8.5 by 11, did the draft so I could send it out as an attachment, and asked, dozens of friends to do this. And over 20 people circulated my petition in those 2 days, and I got over 350 signatures. I was totally stunned. First night I was out learning that a neighbor, Mr. Ward, was circulating petitions as well. I thought only I was crazy enough to do this on 2 days' notice. He was encouraged by Mayor Jennings and McCoy to do that. And we had a great race where we both talked about our qualifications. And when I approached a door, I would say to people, I see you have Terrence Ward's sign up. I'm also running for the position, and aren't you lucky you have, I think, 2 good choices. Let me tell you why I think I'm the better choice. Without saying anything negative about him, as far as I know, he didn't say anything negative about me. And I had, a good campaign in about 6 weeks' time, because our petitioning starts so late, and then you get 6 weeks before the primary. And I did get 60% of the vote, and was very proud of my effort. Got together with Terrence afterwards to talk about what he learned on the campaign that he wanted to share with me, that maybe I should be focusing in on. And we've had a very good relationship ever since. I say all that because, I wish more campaigns were like that. I think that we both did a great service to our community in introducing ourselves. One of the reasons why I would go up to somebody who had Terrence Ward's signs is because, sometimes people weren't necessarily sure that they were supporting that person, but also because I felt like there was a good chance I was going to win, and this person took enough of an interest to have that sign up. And I felt like they should have the opportunity to meet and talk to me about their concerns, because if I won, I was going to be representing them, and without taking an attitude, I think, about, oh, well, you supported the other candidate. So, and I'm proud of the way I have listened to all viewpoints, and have learned a lot in the process.
Okay, let's go now to Councilman O'Brien. Same question.
Well, I have been a committeeman for a long time, and And then when Philly said that he was going to retire within our committee, I approached a ward leader who was Harold Joyce. And I got the endorsement of the committee. And the interesting thing is that the first primary, and since I was being supported by Harold, Jerry didn't like Harold. So Jerry endorsed a different candidate, Dave McGuire, who was a nice fellow. I mean, he had been the principal of Albany High. So we were both in the race, and the primary was scheduled for September 11th, 2001. And everybody remembers that particular date, and the primary got canceled and rescheduled for 2 weeks later. And at that time, I was in the Army National Guard, and I got activated to New York City. So I cast my absentee vote before I went to New York City, and that's where I was during the election. I had been involved in the neighborhood associations and all, so I was fortunate enough to win. And I remember that the press made a little bit of a fuss over the fact that I was down in New York City doing military service and won the election at the same time. So that's how I got involved, mainly because I was a committeeman. I worked in the Upper Washington Avenue Neighborhood Association, and it just seemed a natural thing to do. And then the election was as different as any I've ever been through. The fact that I was away doing a different type of very valuable service. So that's history. That was then. Hopefully never to be repeated for an election process, having it delayed by such a catastrophe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Conti, same question.
Yeah, thanks. So I was running, my first election was in 97. That was the year of the Jennings-McEnany mayoral primary. It was also a time when we had a lot heavier turnout in elections than we do nowadays. Well, the turnout nowadays pales in comparison to the turnout that was back in those days in 97, 93, both on the ward level and citywide. And that's one of my concerns, by the way, just the real decline in voter participation. But I'd been a member of the committee, a ward leader, active in my neighborhood. And my predecessor, Sharon Ward, was, she was, well, at one point, I think she was thinking about higher office, and then something else happened. And then she ended up relocating to Philadelphia. And so she was leaving the area and her seat came open. That was an opportunity. And, I got in the race. There were actually 4 candidates at one point. One of them dropped out after filing petitions. So it ended up being a 3-way primary. Very active. We all were out there campaigning, knocking on doors, spirited campaign. One of my favorite things, that was also the year that there was a common council primary between, I think it was the year that Helen DeFazis was running and against Bob Van Amberg. And Bob had succeeded to the position of council president because of the death of, I believe it was Joe Lynn. Taxing my memory, Mike is suggesting that. And I remember that there was a debate for the Common Council president candidates at the library, Washington Avenue. Pretty sparse turnout, not really big. The following week, we had a 6 ward candidates debate with all 3 of us participating, and the library was packed in terms of people that came out. There was about 100 or more people that came out for that debate. And so it's always remembering the contrast between, debate for a citywide office. You had a handful of people there that turned out, and then our 6 ward debate. Very, open seats in the 6th ward were always very competitive. And we had a huge turnout for that one. It was an interesting campaign. you know, and I'm trying to remember, you know, it was a relatively close three-way. I ended up winning by a couple of percentage points after the absentee ballots were all counted. And that's, you know, what happened there. It was just an opportunity. I had been involved, an opportunity, an open seat, which was rare. Multi-candidate primary. I think we tried to, you know, do a respectful campaign. There were a lot of jockeying back and forth for various endorsements of various groups and organizations. Some organizations kind of stayed out. Some cases there were dual endorsements, but it was a good campaign. I think it was probably one of the more active campaigns in '97. And as I say, it was the backdrop was we also had against that was the mayoral campaign between Jack and Jerry, which was also very competitive, very highly, you know, run and got a lot of attention as well. It was a very active year. We don't have as many, you know, politics doesn't seem to be as active as it was back then in some respects, but it was a different time. Then I ran in 2001 for re-election, and I was actually had a primary in 2001, you know, on 9/11. And that was another experience. I know we had the polls open and then they were closed at some point after noon, about 15 to 20 minutes into it. And after that, we didn't, that was a three-way primary again that year that I had. And as I recall, after that, we didn't know how to campaign between that canceled primary on 9/11. How do you campaign respectfully after what happened, and then for the rescheduled primary? And so the three of us in my race, at least, none of us actually went out again, and we didn't really do any door-to-door campaigning or any overt thing because it was just sort of like a different time. And how do you act, and what do you do? And we didn't really pick up the campaign, and we certainly weren't going to be doing negative campaigning or anything like that. And I know what the three of us, we each on our own, we sent out our own letters to voters, just noting that the primary had been rescheduled and here was the date. But we didn't make any pitches in there for either of us. It was just kind of a respectful thing. And it was, you know, I think one of the things I remember about that particular primary being canceled because of what happened that day and then rescheduled was trying to figure out what was the most respectful way to campaign between then and the new primary date. But that was my experience running the first time in '97 for an open seat, and then running in the aftermath of 9/11 and how that really changed a lot of things.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Next question is going to be to Councilman O'Brien, I think. Who's up next? Councilman O'Brien. What were some of the biggest challenges that faced your ward during your time in elected office?
Well, the ones that stand out in my mind were the year that I was running, the school district wanted to locate a middle school in Wessel Hills Park. And, you know, the school district definitely needed a new middle school. And they had looked at some alternative sites, which actually they were originally going to build over off of Whitehall Road. And then for some reason, they were directed to look at Wessel Hills Park. And it just meant the loss of the park. Well, not the entire park, but a big chunk of it. So that was one of the issues which activated a lot of people, particularly our neighborhood association. And we actually educated ourselves on the law of parks and advised the school district that they would have to go through an alienation process, and that they, since the park was paid for with federal funds, they would have to replace it somewhere close enough that basically the same constituency would have the benefit of that lost park space. So that was one of the first things. More recently, the whole issue of blood plasma centers. There was an outfit from Florida. the laws governing blood plasma, normally, at least I had always thought that the sale of any body part was illegal. But apparently, FDA or whomever relaxed those rules, and there became more of a proliferation of big nationally owned or even internationally owned companies that, in my opinion, exploited vulnerable people to donate their plasma. And they were even advertising, I've donated blood, but always through the Red Cross. And, I never donated more than maybe about 4 times a year. But the flyers were going out that, you can pay half your rent by donating plasma multiple times a month. So I came at it with the perspective that it was exploitive of a vulnerable population. And then, of course, they were going to put it right in the Hannaford Plaza. So I remember we looked at the USDO, which was totally silent on blood plasma, and it was never the intent as one of the permitted uses in a retail strip mall. So, the whole thing went in front of the, went in front of the zoning board. And originally, this was mysterious. Originally, the planning director supported our point of view and actually authored and sent to the council an ordinance that would have not allowed it there. And then for some reason, their position began to change. And it went in front of the zoning board, and the zoning board ruled in favor of the blood plasma clinic, saying it was light manufacturing, which was something that totally baffled us. So a bunch of neighbors actually brought a Article 78 appeal against the zoning board decision. And then at the same time, I was the primary sponsor to reintroduce the ordinance as it was originally going to be written, which would not have allowed it in that retail setting. And then our Article 78 was mooted out by the pending ordinance. And it was the only time in my whole lifetime in the city of Albany that the ordinance passed unanimously. We did have to amend it, and then we reintroduced it, passed it unanimously again. The mayor vetoed it, and we overrode her veto unanimously. That's the only time in my memory of growing up and living in Albany that ever happened. And then a couple of other things. I mean, we've had some interesting things with some zoning disputes. I mean, some of them we argued, in front of the planning board and got favorable decisions, like the Stewarts having to be right next to some resident, right on Washington Avenue by Coven Avenue, and literally being located exactly next to residential homes. And the planning board agreed with us on that one. And then we had a similar one actually in Westwood Hills Park again, where a developer Coven Avenue would allow a multifamily residential development, but the developer came with what we thought was too big of a plan. And it required 2 egresses. And he came and he had his map out there where I'm gonna have one of my egresses through Westwood Hills Park. And he came in and he argued, to me, it was like a 19th century map, which showed that originally there was going to be a street right through the middle of Westwood Hills Park. And that street never got built. But when they built Westwood Hills Park in the 70s, it started in the 1960s on the west end of it. The Coven Avenue end of it was in the 1970s. They used that street right away for part of the park, and they used that street right away to build an entrance to the park. So I remember Hyde, Clark, and Zach was very involved with that too. But Hyde, Clark, and I were in front of the planning board last December, And we didn't have all the documents from when the school wanted to do a similar thing, but we knew that it was parked, that it had been, the whole issue of parkland is it can be an implied dedication. And probably most of our parks are implied, although many of them started with council ordinances. But Hyde and I managed to, we stated in front of the board that we are confident that this whole road that he wants to access is part of the park. And they, we told the planning board they should do the homework and go through the old records. Well, they turned over to Mr. Hirschberg, who was the advocate for this project, and said, well, Dan, is it part of the park? And he says, oh, no, it isn't part of the park. So Hyde and I had to, and they granted approval of the site plan using the park as a commercial access. And Hyde and I went down to the Hall of Records. Actually, Zach helped us too. And we researched the old records, and sure enough, there it was, the application for federal funding for a park. And in today's dollars, that federal funding was worth millions. And who was the architect? Ian Hirschberg. And he had drawn these maps for submission to the federal government, showing that all the improvements of Anthony Street were under this parkland money. And so we went back to the planning board. They would not redo the hearing. That one mystifies me. But somebody, although not admitting it, agreed that, and Hyde, who's a land use attorney, reminded them that improper use of a park is an ongoing violation. There's no statute of limitations. And he, being a land use attorney, had the wherewithal to make his advisement stronger than just a suggestion. So the project still to this day has not been initiated. They cleared the land, but never went back to the board to submit a new site plan. We've been asking about that, but that we regarded as kind of a victory and gave me continuing insight as to how administrative processes within municipal government should definitely be followed. not shirked, and not say, oh, we won't do our homework. We'll just rely on the developer to tell us what the law is. Good lesson at least learned by us, hopefully by the agencies that are supposed to carry out these practices. So that's what I remember.
Okay, so Councilmember Conti, let's go to you. Want to talk about some of the biggest challenges for the sixth ward?
Yes, I'm a little bit distracted because while I saw something about a shooting up the block, which apparently tonight was a false alarm. So I was just trying to clarify some of that. The challenges here. One of the issues that when I was running and was one of my focuses was the Park South neighborhood, which was had a lot of problems in terms of housing, crime, drugs, a large absentee landlord who, Roger Palouf, who is problematic. And I know that he was also an issue up in the Pine Hills area. So one of my early focuses was on Park South, and we got beginning to work on try to turn things around there in terms of public safety and revitalization. New Scotland Avenue, which was an important commercial corridor, that was a major focus, which eventually evolved into the Park South Revitalization Plan, which became the Park South Urban Renewal Plan, and things have really turned around there. In terms of the public safety issues and the quality of life in the neighborhood. There are still issues and challenges there, but that was a major focus of attention. Another focus of attention problem, which was age old in my area, and I know also for the Mansion neighborhood, was parking. Long before I went on the council, permit parking was a big priority. That took us many, many years to get. Finally got a system in, still has problems, but we're working on it. But that was a big issue as well. But I think like other neighborhoods, we're dealing with quality of life issues. We're dealing with the challenges sometimes of having the balancing between commercial activities and nightlife and residential neighborhoods and uses. When you have Lark Street, which has gone back and forth, surrounded by densely populated residential neighborhoods, you need to find the proper balance where some of those commercial uses, nightlife uses, late night uses can live side by side with residential uses. So that's always been a challenge in terms of maintaining quality of life in the neighborhood and wanting to see a vibrant mixed-use commercial corridor. And I'll say Lark Street has gone back and forth. And right now, I think I'm impressed. We have a nice balance on Lark Street with new retail uses, service uses, restaurants, taverns, nightlife. So we've created, I think right now we're in a good spot pretty much, although there are still sometimes conflicts in terms of balance in that area. Washington Park has always been a major concern for my area in terms of maintaining the quality of the park, and it's making sure that it's accessible to the public. Special events, there are a number of special events that happen in the park, and you need to find that balance between the two because they impact the neighborhood when you have a special event in terms of the people, the parking issues, the traffic congestion. And it's, sometimes during the summer, it's like, an event a week, which really has an impact, and try to find that balance. And it's, we're a very diverse neighborhood. We've got a lot of turnover. There's a certain transient population, people coming in and out, moving in and out, whether they're working for the state, they're going to school, they're here for jobs. But we also have a very strong owner-occupied neighborhood base as well that provides stability. So it's really an interesting area. But the challenges, I think, are really trying to find the balance that is particular to a densely populated urban area where maintaining the quality of life, wanting to have a vibrant neighborhood, which is what brings people to live in an area like this. Want to make sure we have walkability and pedestrian safety. We also have a very large, parent population, you might say, young families here and kids. A lot of kids in the neighborhood too. So it's very diverse, and I think the closeness that we have and the strength of our neighborhood associations and working together creates good bonds so that we know our neighborhoods and we know our neighbors, we create our friendships that way and relationships that way. And I think it's something unique for an area that I live in. I don't know if that answered the question or if I just went all over the place, but that's it.
You did great. You did great. Thank you. All right, Council Member Doche, challenges in this ninth ward.
So I want to first agree with Richard that so much of it is about reaching the right balance and figuring out how to deal with the competing interests, competing goals. I often said when I worked for the Department of Health, the toughest things are to figuring out how to deal with when public policy bucks up against public policy, and it's it's important to think about that and have dialogues with people in the community regarding that. I share Richard's sentiment about how my neighborhood is a great neighborhood for people really to establish connections. I gotta say, I had such a great time on Halloween with all the kids coming by in our neighborhood, really worked on their outfits, and they were so well behaved. You wouldn't know that there's any problems in our city at all for the hundreds of kids that that came by, and parents being out there, and just people having a good time. I think that it helped that it was good weather for this particular Halloween. Challenges. So I ran thinking, what issues are left in, my ward for me, streets, potholes, sidewalk, repairs or whatever. And then within 8 months of my starting to serve, there was the August 5th, 2014, I think it was, flooding event, the micro bursts, in which parts of the city got 3 inches of rain in half an hour. And I had people with, the first floor of their houses, 4 feet of water in them. And I started then to learn, I think in terms of, streets, sidewalks, trees, everything above ground. I started to learn about everything underground and the whole sewer system. Learned all about the Beaver Creek, which one of its main trunks runs right through the 9th Ward, Hanson and Reichman and Warren Street and down to Park, and then down into Park South area. And those places where the mains are, when that sewer system gets overwhelmed, you can have 2 feet of water in the street. And flooding cars and that kind of thing. I didn't know what to do with it. And people were calling me, expecting me to do something about it. I was like, well, I think the first thing to do is to get the water commissioner in and the mayor in and have a community meeting so that people could at least be heard about what their frustrations are, and they can listen to what was being talked about. And that was a great community meeting that we held. And within a year, essentially, the city made over a $2 million commitment to doing additional storage tank areas in actually in the 10th ward, but abutting the 9th ward, and a constructed wetland that has helped with the issues from my reports from people living on Reichman and Hanson, where some of the worst flooding was, has helped, quite a bit. But when Mother Nature has those kinds of impacts on us, it can be very easy to say, well, what can I do about it? And making sure people's voices are heard and people get together to problem solve is a great thing. I also then immediately started having discussions with people about the Palladium project, what to do about the vacant Palladium in terms of zoning. A couple of projects came by that people rejected, and then the current project was there. A lot of frustrations because we passed a new USDO and it's supposed to result in the reduction of variances. And the 2 main projects by the same developer in my ward wound up getting significant variances on that, as well as the planning department ignoring some of the code requirements of the USDO as they worked through the issues. When USDO was passed, we debated what would be the appropriate zoning for the area from Onderdonk, which is near where the post office is, that had been zoned for garden apartments, which was no longer a zoning option. So it was being zoned RM, which allowed 4-story buildings. There was general agreement that would be too tall. So there was a restrictive covenant that was negotiated with the landowner at that point. I pointed out that there was no enforcement mechanism. They put in enforcement mechanism that the city could enforce. And I think, as we all know, the city didn't enforce that. So there's 4-story buildings being built there. Requirements for vegetative coverage have been ignored at both locations, including counting and using green roofs to be counted as landscaping, buffering and screening. even though they're on the top of the 4 or 5-story building. So that's been a challenge. I have dealt with some of that in the revised USDO that we are about to adopt, including clarifying those vegetative coverage requirements, reducing the heights allowed for certain buildings, and cat's out of the bag for those particular developments. I don't know what else might come down the pike with regard to that, but there are some more protections in place. And finally, getting Woodlawn Park cleaned up. I have this, Woodlawn Park is actually a larger area, but there's the park that people refer to as Woodlawn Park, which is a small postage stamp size playground area that about a third of which was underbrush, that garbage accumulated in the area. And then another part behind National Little League was equivalent to, again, about a third of the park that also had garbage in the area, a lot of underbrush. There was a teen hangout. Some people thought it was a homeless location with a car seat in there, construction debris, etc. So little by little, I eked away at some of these issues. That took up a good deal of the 6 years that I had been on the council trying to get the improvements done. Most of it has been cleared out, but in the process of clearing out the part behind National Little League, there were garbage bags containing asbestos tile there that DGS just plowed through and spread those bags around that entire area. They wouldn't listen to me when I said, I think that that's asbestos there. And there's also other garbage, including, the car seat in a flat screen TV that Deputy Commissioner of Rex pointed out to me early on in my being a little chagrined about what happened there. And eventually, with my being ignored, including some of those emails that I didn't even get acknowledgement that I sent the emails on some of these issues. Eventually, I picked up a couple samples of the asbestos tile, of the floor tile, that looked to be from like the 1950s, got it tested in an environmental lab, and yes, it was asbestos. I wrote a letter to the mayor, included about 15 pictures of the garbage, of the plastic bags, still the tops of the plastic bags still sticking through that area. Some of them had been torn off they threw down grass seed and then they were mowing it with riding lawnmowers, but I still had the pictures. And they did a lot of the cleanup of the garbage that was on top, and they hired an environmental firm, but they wouldn't talk to me about what I knew. Nobody talked to me because they didn't want to really know, and they had their plan, and that resulted in them picking up asbestos that was on top of the soil and then putting down 2 to 3 inches of soil and throwing down grass seed, and they've called it done. I am chagrined that the city in the mayor's office would think that that is an appropriate way to deal with the fact that there were garbage bags there containing asbestos tile that they then plowed and partially plowed under, along with there were other metal bars and other things that were there, and to essentially treat it like a dump. And the explanation alters between, no, we didn't do it, we don't know who did it, oh, that's been a dump. Everybody knows that was a dump. Well, when the water department dealt with the Babe Ruth fields and the constructed wetlands, everybody said, oh, everybody knows that that's a dump. And I've talked to the commissioner and deputy commissioner. No, they didn't find any evidence of there being, deposit of trash in those areas. So there's a little bit of a rumor mill, an excuse there. Great frustration on my part that I will be leaving office, and I seem to have been unable to get the city to do what I think is the right thing, which was, and I specifically asked for the mayor to dig up the bags, remove them by an environmental firm, and then put clean fill in there, as opposed to doing what they did. So this is a mostly undeveloped area of the park. I do have some concerns about what will be done with that area in the future that may unearth some of that asbestos and what might be done inadvertently without the city involvement on it. So those were my worst challenges, I think, while I was on the council. Staying on top of emails, constituent calls, texts, that's an unbelievable challenge. I probably have about 400 from the last 2 days that I have not been able to fully get through, and issue spotting and doing triage is also a great challenge. So thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah. I just wanted to maybe just wrap things up a little bit. We'll go with Councilmember Conti. Do you want to just talk, give some closing remarks about maybe some advice you're going to give to your successor coming into office? I just want to mute yourself there.
Yeah. Well, I have been sitting down with my successor. We've been going over things so we can have a kind of a transition there. You learn a lot over 24 years. You don't learn it right away, and I can go back to my first year on the council, and the way I handle things was probably a little bit different. I think I've grown and matured over the years in terms of my approaches to things. So it's a learning experience. And it's important to, maintain contact with your constituents in some ways. And when I was first on the council, I used to do a paper newsletter that we dropped door to door, try to do that quarterly. Nowadays, no one does that. So, we've been pioneering different ways of maintaining communications with people is also important. You have neighborhood association meetings, but you need to go beyond that as well. So I think for a council member, it's important to maintain visibility, maintain communications, and keep your constituency informed and get their input and things of that nature. And I think it's just important to listen. And also, listen respectfully. You may disagree with your constituent on an issue, but to listen and try to understand their point of view, or explain yours. And also to respond to communications, which that's really hard. Judy mentioned that in the era of emails, you can get a ton of emails in your inbox, and you're always going to be behind, and that's another issue. It's, I think be open to learning as you go along. Listen not just to your constituents, but be able to listen to your colleagues on the council and have a dialogue. Sometimes on the council, I get frustrated because it sounds like we do more in talking at each other than talking to each other. I will tell you this past year or so, with virtual meetings has been frustrating because even though in some respects people say, oh, more people are involved, that lack of one-on-one, real communication with people and with your colleagues, that you lose something there because that communications and the links and the collegiality that you might otherwise have in real in-person meetings, you lose with the virtual meetings. So I think this is one thing that kind of frustrates me because we're not having that real life interaction. And I'm hoping that before the year ends, because right now our council meetings, we were briefly back in City Hall, we've gone back to virtual, And I'm hoping that before the year is out, we only have a couple meetings left, that we can get back to a real life meeting in City Hall before it ends, because I think that's important. So, I think the thing is, it's a learning experience. Be open to learning, listen, and be responsive.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Conti. Councilmember Doche, same thing.
Did you just call on me? You got a little bit foggy there.
Yep, it's you.
Okay, thank you. So closing comments. Well, it's been a great privilege to serve in this capacity. It's been fun and interesting and educational. And I am looking forward to getting off the treadmill a bit in terms of I can't get everything done that I would like to get done. I hope that as I leave, that everybody knows that whether they agreed with me or disagreed with me on any given issue, I was always focused on what are the best interests of the residents, what's in the best interest of the city. And, I could disagree with people, or I could initially have a reaction. I still listened. I think it's really important to listen to all the different perspectives and viewpoints. And sometimes you can initially think that something is really minor. And the more you think about it, it really is a quality of life issue that affects a lot of people. So listening and figure out the best way to deal with those kinds of things is really important. With regard to advice for Megan, I don't really have much because I think she comes in with a similar attitude towards public service, anxious to serve the public, listening to people, being out. And while she hasn't attended a lot of neighborhood associations, I know she's doing more of that now. I think, so I think she shares some of my values and my attitude towards public service, but she will have her own way of doing it, her own way of communicating. My guess is that she will have a better idea of how to deal with some of the electronics and the technology and stuff that will make her more efficient, I hope for her sake, than me. So, we will see about that. I have begun, I've been having a dialogue with her for some time, for several months, and I have been looping her in on things that I know that are going to carry over into her term for quite some time, so that if she has an opinion about something, she can share that with me. We can have a little bit of a dialogue in the thought process. It hasn't been a lot of back and forth on that kind of thing, but there's been a little bit. And I think that should help smooth the transition. But that first year is a bit of a learning curve in understanding really how busy you can be in trying to do everything that you really want to accomplish for our residents in our ward, throughout our city, and for the city itself. We still have a lot of work to do. And I look forward to continuing to be a resource for her as we move forward.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Councilmember O'Brien, closing remarks.
Well, I agree with all of the advice and lessons learned that both Richard and Judy have stated. And, I'm an optimist. I think the council will have a bit of a vacuum at first because, they certainly have contributed a tremendous amount to the council as I've been on it. But I don't despair of them learning from their predecessors and learning on their own. So I would just be repeating what they have said, but I agree with their advice and their perspective on what it is to be a good council member and to stay in touch with the people you represent.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for having this community conversation. We really appreciate it. And
Zach, can I just, one last thing, because I noticed that Colin had put a question in the chat box about the blood plasma.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, which I think I just wanted to touch on that about the issue. Demonstrates that a static document like an ordinance is always going to be behind the times. Do retiring members of the council have any ideas of how the current zoning ordinance can be kept current and new challenges that will appear thanks to changes in technology moving forward? And I do want to say one of the things about the USDO, which is something that I know Mike and Judy and I have been pushing the planning department on in terms of compliance with what the intent was. But when the USDO was adopted, there was supposed to be a 6-month review and then an annual review after that, so that we on an annual basis can review that document, identify issues, problems, changes, and adjustments that need to be made. And that would address, I think, some of the question that Colin put forward. One of our frustrations is that having the document was adopted in 2017, and it's just this year finally that we're getting into the first review. And that's another example of some of the frustrations we have, is getting departments to comply with the requirements of code and things that we have laid out. But in theory, that is what is supposed to happen, is you're supposed to have this annual review. And I think moving forward, we're now on track with that. That will allow us to constantly look at the USDO and make adjustments and changes as needed to address issues like that.
You know, just
to really touch on Colin's question.
Just to follow up on what Richard said. Yeah, you know, and one of the things that frustrated me was some language in the USDO, I believe, was misread. And for example, there was a section which said that if a city agency, meaning like, let's say DGS felt the need to change the zoning on a particular part of the city, that city agency had to go through the planning department to basically get approval from the planning board about offering that change. Well, other parts of our charter and other parts of the USDO clearly said that zoning is a council responsibility. But for some amazing reason that I still do not understand, our Corp Council and our planning board looked at that one little section and said, the city council's a city agency. Therefore, they have to get our approval to do anything with the code, which couldn't have been further from the truth. And I was glad that through the plasma case, which, by the way, our ordinance got legally challenged. And that was one of the points which they raised. They said, see, this city agency, even though the charter says that they have control over a zoning ordinance, they really don't, because they're a city agency. And look at this one little sentence. And the court set them straight. And they abandoned their argument now and into the future, which their strange belief, which they followed for about three years, they abandoned that and now acknowledge that the council is not on a leash to the planning board such that they can overrule changes that we feel are necessary to make. So that was a great lesson learned.
Good points.
I want to thank Mike for his persistence and his leadership on that particular issue. And the three of us could probably, talk another 45 minutes about everything behind that, including the mayor's press release that I consider to be wholly inappropriate, and some actions of Corp Council in that case. We did prevail. We were right. And it's unfortunate sometimes you have to fight quite so hard to be respected, I think, for exercising your legal authority.
Hey, good, very good. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much again. Does anybody else have any new business tonight to bring up? Just want to mention, so in December, we're doing the neighborhood go around. We have, I believe, Beverwick, Melrose, Mount Hope, Downtown, which is a new one, and Helderberg Neighborhood Associations presenting about some of the work that they're doing. January, we have Darius Shanfar, City Treasurer, and Dr. Dorcia Pleers, City Auditor. And then February, we're going to have Mayor Kathy Sheehan present to CANA. So if there's anything, is there anything else tonight folks want to bring up before we call it an evening?
Thank you for your time, council members.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yay. Well, folks, we'll see you next month. Everybody stay safe. Have a nice Thanksgiving, okay?
Bye-bye.
Take care, Zach. Thanks again.
We'll see you next month. Bye, everybody. Stay well.